Testosterone doesn't solve relationship problems, but it definitely gives you the foundation to have a healthy relationship.
Dave Lee.
Dave Lee.
Dave is the founder of Advanced Fundamental Health.
This is hugely impacting how a lot of guys are feeling cognitively as they're coming into adulthood. If I'm going to support the foundation of my health with optimizing my hormones, it will give me a higher capacity for workload. Service your body more often than you service your car.
All right, welcome back to the Empowered Man podcast. We are here with Dave Lee, one of the world's leading experts when it comes to health, hormone optimization, and all things testosterone. I've been following this guy for years, and he's actually helped me optimize my health and take me from being a little boy who couldn't grow any facial hair to finally having a bit of a mo. I'm still working on the full package there, Dave, but how are you, brother? Welcome to the pod.
Doing well, man. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's dive right in. We've got a lot to cover. I'd love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about who you are and your background and what you specialize in. And then I've got a bunch of questions for you, man, on how we can optimize health, wealth, relationships. So feel free to give us a rundown.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Dave. I am a health coach originally from Perth, Western Australia. I currently live in Lithuania. For those who don't know where that is, it's very normal. I didn't used to know where it is either. It's north of Poland, west of Russia. It's the southernmost Baltic state. And I've been living over here for the last 5 years, running my health coaching business, which is primarily helping men get started with or troubleshoot their testosterone replacement therapy. In the last 5 years, TRT has become a bit of a buzzword, actually more so in the last maybe year to year and a half. It's become a bit of a buzzword, but it's gradually built momentum as an interventional health treatment over the last decade. And it's been very exciting for me and very fulfilling for me to be at the forefront of that, I guess, health revolution for men. I've been an educator in the space for a number of years now. I've written a few books. I've got my third book coming out very shortly, speaking at a few international conferences, got millions of views on YouTube on hundreds of educational videos, helping men understand the ins and outs of TRT. But I guess most importantly for the average listener is to understand what's going on with their mind, understand what's going on with their body, understanding the interconnected relationship between the various systems in the body and how important testosterone is for how you feel, how you look, how you function, how you think, and ultimately where you get to on your trajectory in life.
100%, man. And yeah, I mean, you're booked out 6 to 12 months in advance at times. So clearly you are in demand and you've helped thousands of people, probably more. So we work on that interconnectedness you talked about, right? There's health, wealth, relationships. There's your body with your mind, your physical body, your emotions, your thoughts. Then there's your wealth and your business, your career. And then there's your relationships with yourself, your children, your partner, your loved ones. And they are all interconnected. So when we think about the frame of performance, like how does testosterone for the average listener play into how they perform in each of these areas? Because I think what a lot of men think testosterone is something you jab into yourself when you want to get jacked, when we both know it's so much more. So how does it actually play into those core areas of performance, and how does it destroy you or build you up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of people conflate testosterone and anabolic steroids. Testosterone can also be abused as an anabolic steroid, but when we're talking about hormone optimization, what we're ultimately doing is I like to say we're giving people good genetics, and it's not actually what we're doing. We can't change the genome, but testosterone is a big factor in what allows certain guys to shake things off in life a bit better, do a bit better under stressful circumstances, while other guys would crumble and falter both physically and mentally. We see a lot of it, particularly in the mental department for the younger guys. We've got this relatively new health problem where younger men, even when they look after themselves properly, a lot of them don't, and that's the primary issue. But even younger guys who are looking after themselves really well have the testosterone levels of an unhealthy 80-year-old. And this is due to the modern environment. I call it the 3 Ps, the pollutions, plastics, and pesticides that a lot of us were raised with, particularly in Western countries. And it's had a devastating impact on male and female hormones. And this is hugely impacting how a lot of guys are feeling cognitively as they're coming into adulthood. I think one of the biggest challenges that guys are having is they don't feel capable and brave and courageous, but they're also not resilient to stress. They're not taking risks. They're not wanting to go out and leave their mark in the world. They've got the mindset of a man who's a lot more frail and meek, and they're choosing the path of least resistance. They're choosing to stay indoors and play video games because it's easier to get your sense of battle and sense of overcoming adversity from behind a screen. They're seeking out pornography because that's easier than the rejection and vulnerability that comes with intimacy. And now, there's things like OnlyFans and all these other things that guys are getting into to fill the role of a relationship. So when men are low in testosterone, it removes your body's primary counterbalance to stress. From a biological standpoint, this is against cortisol and adrenaline. And from an endocrine standpoint, it's against estrogen. And from a behavioral standpoint, it is the thing that allows you to get the both dopaminergic reward as well as the purpose-based and meaning reward from going out and doing hard things. And when we remove that buffer to stress, all of a sudden things become more difficult and less rewarding. So as humans who are reward-driven creatures, which is just how we are programmed or built or evolved, depending on what you believe in, we will always self-medicate these systems in the body, and we will always respond to our biology. And it's a big challenge for men when we start to understand the interconnected relationship of the human biology, but then also understanding that we are a sentient, conscious being on top of that. So it's kind of like we're a car that's alive, like the movie Cars. And this is very tricky because now we're interacting with a whole bunch of other people who are going through life, experiencing this, learning these things, and we're having to form relationships, business relationships, friendships, all these different things that we're getting bombarded with. And I think it can be very overwhelming. I think it can be very challenging. And I think a lot of guys are missing the boat. I think a lot of guys are taking a left when they should take a right. And more men are getting bamboozled and gaslighted by the modern pharmaceutical industry to think that the solution for the fact that they live a depressing life is to take a pill which will alter their neurochemistry to think they are doing better than they are. And this is a huge issue because the good thing is more young men are catching on to this and realizing that they do have endocrine issues. And a lot of the health issues that guys are having are self-inflicted. They're diet and lifestyle induced. And I think this needs to be the primary focus of men listening to this is look to essentially build your health foundation from proper diet and lifestyle practices, which are integral, not just for how you look in the mirror, but how you function as a vessel. And then if that fails and you don't get the reward that you should be having, that's when it's time to start looking into things like getting your blood work done and speaking to someone about hormone replacement therapy, if that is something that is needed. But the most important thing, which is why I'm booked out quite heavily in advance, is you need someone who knows what they're doing, who isn't just going to sell you the thing that they make a commission on, which a lot of the time these clinics do. They'll say, they have a hammer and everything looks like a nail. So you've got a problem, I've got the solution. Here's a bunch of testosterone. And this creates even more problems. So it's a tricky industry to navigate, and having someone on side who, and again, I'm not trying to sell my services, I'm quite booked out, but having someone on side who can help you with this is absolutely integral for navigating this area of health.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I both know there's a number of men listening who probably would benefit from looking into it. But the problem is they don't even see the benefits because they're so damn busy. And it's ironic, you talk about the dopamine factor and not finding pleasure in life and reward, which is why so many men watch porn and sedate. The people listening to this podcast, they're high performers, right? They have businesses, they have staff, they work hard, they grind. They don't have time for video games. But ironically enough, they sedate in other ways, right? They drink alcohol, they smoke weed, they watch porn. You mentioned OnlyFans. Or they grind with work itself and then they wake up going, I have no fucking purpose. And to top it all off, what's happening is they're exhausted. They're exhausted and they go to work and they push through, which is sort of why I wanted to bring you on. There's a lot of men here who can relate to what I went through. I was trying to optimize my testosterone. I was focusing on sleep, exercise, nutrition, but I was fucking depressed. I was stressed. I couldn't deal with pressure. I was a piece of shit to my wife. There are a lot of men out there that can relate to this. They're trying to do everything right. They're trying to eat well. They're trying to do exercise. So I want to unpack a few things here. The first one is if someone's listening right now and they're exercising, let's say every day, and they're eating okay, but they're stressed out, they're sedating, and their marriage is falling apart, how does testosterone play into that? And how can they start to unravel those issues that are all interconnected?
Yeah, and this is where I think it's important to look at testosterone for what it is. And I think in some contexts, it can be a bit of a double-edged sword. And I've seen it play out as a double-edged sword a couple of times. So one of the things that we have to look at if we're going to consider testosterone replacement therapy is we are removing what's called the rate limiting factor towards production. So, if you are stressed and burnt out and, not sleeping enough and not looking after yourself properly, your body won't make as much testosterone as it would if you weren't doing that, because your body is now focusing on survival, not reproduction. So if you remove that pathway, so if your body is pumping the brakes and you're going, I've got the solution, I'm going to come in with more accelerator, you're not going to have a smooth ride forward. You're now working against the body, not with it. So I think that one of the mistakes that guys can make is they go, I'm burnt out, I'm stressed, you're kind of like what you said, you are maladaptively coping towards your stresses with unhealthy behaviors, generally avoiding the thing that you need to be looking at, which a lot of guys are guilty of in all aspects of health and life. And you're going, okay, I'm going to solve the problem by turbocharging myself. And that will give me more capacity to be able to, do all these things I need to do and not get burnt out. Kind of like a hormone version of using things like Adderall or dexamphetamine. And if someone is going to use something like that, it's probably the healthier option for sure. But what we kind of have to look at with testosterone replacement therapy is that testosterone replacement therapy is very prone to side effects when it's not done right, either by the practitioner or the patient. And a lot of the time people blame the practitioner for things that are the fault of the patient. And what we have to do when we're looking at TRT is going, if I'm going to inject the levels of a healthy man of testosterone, I need to be living in a way that I would be creating those levels if I could. And the disconnect between how you're living and the levels that you're injecting are going to show up as side effects. And these can be things like acne, bloating, overconversion to estrogen. That they tend to be the big ones. Anxiety is a big one too. Insomnia, over agitation, various issues that guys can have. So I think if guys are going to be looking at this situation, I think they have to, I have this saying, which I learned from a friend of mine who was a mentor, which is this idea of meeting the medicine halfway. To go, okay, if I'm going to support the foundation of my health with optimizing my hormones, it will allow me to maybe not burn the candle at both ends, but it will give me a higher capacity for workload, which is generally what these guys are looking for. They're going, I have all this potential, I have all these opportunities, I have all these goals, but I'm not able to push myself as hard as I should be able to push myself. Cool. Well, testosterone will help you do that. But you also have to go, if I'm going to be a high performance individual, I also have to recover like an athlete. And that's the most important thing. So if you want to be able to go, I want to be more efficient, I want to be more resilient to stress, I want to be able to work productively more hours in a day, cool. Testosterone can help you with that. But it won't allow you to get away with the shitty nutrition, the lack of sleep, the lack of self-care, the massive psychological stress that guys put them through because they don't know how to decompress. They don't know how to switch off. They don't know how to spend time in nature, or they don't value doing that. And then you can basically get yourself in a scenario where you have the capacity to really do some damage with what people call burnout, which some people wear like a badge of honor, which is ridiculous. So you can definitely now torch the candle at both ends if you want to, or you can probably get to that equilibrium, happy medium point, which guys are looking for, which is, I can work more hours in a day, I can push through, but I also need to look after myself well. And it's like a sports car. You can go faster, you can take the corner more aggressively, you can put the gas down and you can get more charge out of the vehicle, but you got to look after it, you got to know how to drive it, you got to service it. And a lot of guys want the sports car, but they don't want to learn how to drive it or have the responsibilities that come with servicing it. And that's the big issue that guys can have when they start this. Some destined for greatness do fantastic with it. Others do a number of them on themselves because they're either not taking advice and they're not taking input, or they're not being responsible with their own health.
Yeah. They're not focusing on the basics, right? So there's a lot of guys that will listen to this and they want that magic pill and they struggle to switch off, and they know that there are solutions out there. How do you coach a man who comes to you or who's listening to this going, I'm not doing the basics and my relationship isn't working and I am stressed, but this is going to help me fix those issues? Because that's almost where I was at. Like, I wasn't drinking or eating shit. I was eating really well. I was trying to sleep well. But because I was so fucking stressed, I couldn't get my testosterone to where it needed to be. And when I got on it, when I've been on TRT now for 2 years, it felt like I was a new human again. My tolerance for stress 10x, and it almost like they went hand in hand. But there are a lot of men out there who aren't doing the right thing. So before we go into who should get on TRT, I'd love for you to break down in a bit more detail, what are the basics? You talked about sleep, nutrition, etc. Like, if you start your day and finish your day, what does a great day look like in terms of movement, nature, sleep, hydration, food? I know it's a loaded question, but if you could just give a summary of what a guy should be focusing on before he does his blood work, what would you say there? What would be like the summary of a perfect day, or what to do before getting on something like this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think there are two things that guys need to look at when it comes to improving their health, to put it into buckets. It's the things that you need to stop doing and the things that you need to start doing. And most of the time, it's the things that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing that are causing more issues than the things that you're not doing that you should be doing. In my experience, and I have a whole 1 hour lecture which breaks this down, which is Your Brain on Testosterone and the War on Masculinity Part 2. I make the case that not everyone, some people genuinely don't know how to exercise, how to eat properly, and that's cool. That's something they need to learn. But in my experience, most people know exactly what they're doing that they shouldn't be doing, and they know exactly what they're not doing that they should be doing. You just got to fix that. Just go, hey, you're not getting away with this. You might not understand how that's causing you not to get away with it, but you're not. Hold yourself to keep your word to yourself, hold yourself accountable, and fix your shit. But the main things that guys need to take out is the drugs, alcohol, and junk food. They're the big ones, massively. And then the things that guys aren't doing enough of, generally it's movement, especially post-COVID, where more people are working from home. They're getting less of that, walking from the car to the office and the office to the car and the, office to the lunch spot and so forth. They're getting less, additional movement throughout the day. That's a big one. And then, not sleeping and recovering properly. In this space, a lot of guys are massively overdoing the stimulants. They've still got stimulants circulating in their body, the pre-workout, the coffee when they're trying to go to bed. They're not getting proper sleep cycles. And then this creates this vicious cycle. So if we're going to look at like perfect day from start to finish, I encourage guys not to get too neurotic with this, because then you can just create more anxiety. But some guys need routine. Some guys need to become more relaxed and flow with life a bit more. You kind of got to look at, well, which one am I lacking, and look at that. So I think the stuff that people should be prioritizing is getting outside, natural sun exposure, very, very important, especially if you work behind a screen all day. Ideally, getting outside in different points of the day to align your circadian rhythm properly. So getting different spectrums of sunlight in your eyes, on your skin. Trying to get as much sunlight as you can without burning. And then if you live in a country like I do, where it gets very dark in the winter, get as much sunlight as you can in the summer months. The next thing is movement. Guys are not moving enough. If you go and thrash your body for an hour, 3 or 4 times a week in the gym, you also need to do more exercise than that. You can't just be sedentary outside of that. So going on walks every day, 10,000 steps is a great thing to aim for. I know it's a cliche, but it's a good cliche to aim for. And then some form of cardiovascular exercise. Cardio is not just a calories in, calories out tool. It's a really important tool for releasing endorphins, upregulating what's called the endocannabinoid system, which is an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant system in the body, but also supporting the health of your heart. So cardio training in some form, do whatever form you like. If you hate running outside like I do, get a cardio machine at home, get a rowing machine, get a spin bike, put it in front of the TV. And then do some form of mobility work, taking your body through a healthy, full range of motion, ideally every day, especially if you're sitting on your ass all day. Because over time, if you don't do that and you're going and doing the heavy deadlifts and the heavy squats and the heavy bench press, you will slip a disc, you will create an injury, you will do something that will set you back so far beyond the time you would have wasted for doing that mobility work you neglected. So movement, good nutrition, clean nutrition, getting outside, mobility work, and then avoiding the toxins. Those are the big ones. And generally, guys are messing up in one major area of that, and then they're going all in on the other areas to try to compensate for that. And it doesn't work. And then the last thing that I would look at in that equation, if guys are nailing every aspect of that, the last thing that they're often overlooking is their psychological health. I think that a lot of talk therapy is counterproductive, and it can be a waste of time if the psychologist is not trained from a proper school of thought, or if they're constantly going back and just digging up what the problems are and not actually working on it. But sometimes for men, it can be really handy to have a guy to come in or a lady to come in and give you the perspective that you're lacking and show you where you are making the mistakes that you're blaming other people for. And I've got a friend and mentor who's fantastic for that. I'll give a shout out. His name's Pete Isaiah. He's got a website called isaiahcoaching.com. That can be very insightful for guys to have someone from an outside perspective to make that psychological intervention to allow them to see that, hey, maybe you don't have a biological issue. Maybe there's something psychological here going on, and you don't need pills or medications or a diagnosis. You just need to hold yourself accountable to your behaviors, realize what's not serving you in the way that you're showing up, and fix that. So huge spectrum of things. And what I've learned is that you have to do it all. And that can be a difficult pill to swallow. But if guys want to be high performance, feel their best, good libido, good mental function, good sleep, you want to have all those things going on, then you have to do the work.
Yeah, all of it. Hey, legend, just really quickly, if you're getting value from this podcast episode, please do me a massive favor. This content's free and it helps change lives. That's why you're listening. Give it a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, or give it 5 stars on podcast platforms. It helps us reach more men and ultimately keep more families together. So please help out. Give it 5 stars, give it a thumbs up. I hope you get value. It's funny because every man says they want it all. They want more money, they want more success, they want the woman, and they're not willing to do what it takes. If you want a great life, you've got to do fucking extraordinary things. And it's not rocket science. It's actually relatively simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. So getting up early, getting in a routine, moving your body, getting into sunlight, eating nutritious food, looking after your psychological health, those are basics that should be normal but aren't in this day and age. Let's say you're one of the guys listening, you've done that. This is what we teach our clients, the basics. And you still feel low on energy. You still feel stressed. You still feel like you're triggered or upset at your partner. And it's like, fuck, I'm doing all the basics, right? At what point then do you start looking into TRT? At what point do you go, fuck, maybe I should do something about it? And when you reach that point, what is the process? Like, what does a guy do when he's considering getting on TRT? Where does he go? Who does he see? What does that process look like?
Yeah, these are great questions. So I think, and the thing that got me into this space, so I had some quite severe health challenges in my mid-20s. I had a brain injury. And when I got through that, I was in this position where I was thinking, I want to be the person who I needed that I didn't have when I was going through this. And I'm not a medical doctor. So as a health coach, one thing that I encourage guys to do is to get preventative blood work. And the way that I look at this is go, look, service your body more often than you service your car. I think you should probably get your car serviced every 6 months, at least every 12 months. I'm not a mechanic. But when it comes to your health, the biggest issue that guys have is they wait till the wheels fly off. You know, the check engine light's on for ages. They ignore it. The wheels fly off. Then they take it to mechanic. Car's fucked. You have a massive bill. And it would have all been prevented if you'd gone and kept on top of things before it became a big problem. Healthcare is exactly the same. The problem is that the Western paradigm of healthcare is completely based around the latter scenario, and it doesn't work. So if guys are wanting to optimize their health, you can't go down to your GP and go, hey, you know, what am I doing wrong? What can I do to be more optimal? They're going to be like, well, I don't know. I'm not trained in this. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're incompetent. It's just a completely different system from what these guys are looking for. So I think having someone who can review your blood work periodically for you to show you and go, hey, you're on the right track, what you're doing is working, or to say, hey, these are the kind of things that are starting to move in the wrong direction, and maybe they're not showing up as a problem now, but this is showing you that, hey, that bad habit, that thing that you're neglecting, that you're trying to get away with, or that you're hoping you're going to get away with, you're not. It just hasn't shown up as the big problem yet. So I think the better thing that guys can do is to have someone doing this preventatively for you. And when I started health coaching, I read a book many years ago called Unconventional Medicine by Chris Kresser. And he presented this model that the future of health would be that rather than going to the doctor when you were sick, you'd see a health coach more often for longer times. You'd have more minutes in a session. You'd be discussing things like training, mental health, nutrition, all of these holistic aspects of health. And healthcare would move into an optimization and preventative paradigm rather than a sick care paradigm. And we've seen that happen, particularly in the US in the last couple of years. When I started doing this and I said I was health coaching, people were like, what's that? You just made that up. Whereas now, you know, I train and coach health coaches, you know, every week, working with different clinics all over the world. So it's becoming a thing. And it's becoming a thing, you know, my undergrad's in marketing. because there's demand. And when there's demand in the market, there comes supply. And I think it's really exciting that people are taking control of their health. So I think the best way to do it is going, rather than waiting to a point that there's a problem, getting blood work done every 6 to 12 months and having someone look over it who can advise you and guide you, particularly if you're doing, like, if you're making the work already, like if you are taking supplements and you've got a personal trainer and you're doing a whole bunch of stuff to improve your health, you want to know that what you're doing is actually working, because the market's full of snake oil. It's full of, people who are wasting their time and energy. And one of the worst things I think as a man is to go all in on something that was wrong. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating to self. You don't want to be going, hey, I'm doing all this work on like a plant-based diet, or like, all this work on like, just something that's misguided, and then finding out and going, oh, that actually was messing me up, not helping me. You don't want to get super far down that road. So I think having someone looking over it independently periodically is helpful. But if we're in a situation where someone's going, should I pull the trigger on TRT? I have ABC symptoms and I'm doing XYZ. Do I need to make an intervention, or do I need, more time, or is this actually appropriate? That's where it becomes a big discussion about long-term goals, what your symptoms are, how long your symptoms have been there. And it really comes down to symptoms. And it comes down to, do you feel the way you should feel based on what you're doing and for how long you've been doing it? If you were living like a dickhead and then for the last 6 months you've been living really optimally, it's going to take you a bit more than 6 months to fix 6 years worth of damage. But if you've been doing everything right for a long time, if you're living like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 and you feel like a 3 out of 10, that's where there can be a disconnect. And that's where the situation can be what's called intractable, meaning it can't be resolved. And that's the point that we want to intervene with hormone replacement therapy, not earlier. So I think the best thing the guys can do when they're in doubt is go have a discussion, ideally have blood work done periodically. So we're looking at multiple points in time and multiple data points, and look into everything. Testosterone's sexy, it's cool. Every guy wants more testosterone. But if you've got liver disease, if you've got a thyroid issue, if you've got something going on where there's another thing in your biology that's compromising this system or causing the same symptoms, you need to fix that. It's kind of like, going to the mechanic and upgrading the engine isn't going to solve every problem with your car. Supercharging it may sound cool, but that might not be the thing that you need. And actually, if there's a problem somewhere else with the car, supercharging it could make it worse. So third-party guidance, ideally preventatively, is going to be the way to go.
Huge. So just to unpack that, and one thing that you didn't say out loud, but that came up for me is baseline. Like, we don't have a baseline. That preventative blood work is a baseline. You don't just buy things without checking your bank balance. When you run a business, you have numbers and spreadsheets. Even when you go to the gym, you track your weight. Most people do. We tend to not have this baseline when it comes to our health. So just to clarify what I've heard you say, anyone who's listening right now who's going through problems, fit, not fit, healthy, not healthy, stressed, not stressed, if you're currently not doing blood work, start doing it. Every, 3 to 6 months, at least 6 months, right? From there, once you've done that blood work, find an expert who can help you unpack that blood work. We'll drop Dave's links down below, as well as his book as well, because we'll get into TRT and dosages. And then if you're doing everything right, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, and you're still feeling these symptoms that are negative, right? Stressed, low energy, sleeping poorly, not losing as much weight, not building enough muscle, triggered and angry towards your wife. You're doing all these things right. It's still not working. You got the blood work. At that point, it's something you now get to consider, correct? So let's say you pull the trigger and you go, fuck it. I remember I had the testosterone in my office for like 6 months. I'm like, I don't know if I should do this, man, because it is often a lifelong journey. I did pull the trigger and it made such a difference. But for somebody who has that, like, what happens once they pull the trigger? What happens then? Do you inject for life? Do you have to inject? Like, I know we're going to put your ebook down below that explains it all, but there'll be a lot of people going, this sounds like something I might need to do. What's the process from there?
Yeah, if it was a low commitment, high reward scenario, it would be a very quick conversation. It would be, here, take some testosterone, see you later. It's great. So the reason why it's a bigger commitment to make is that when you administer what's called exogenous, meaning in external testosterone, your body has these very complex feedback loops, and it goes, okay, there's plenty of testosterone here, so I don't need to make this anymore. And that causes your testicular axis, the connection between the testicles and the brain, to go offline. And this essentially creates an acquired hormone deficiency. So it's kind of like you're becoming a type 1 diabetic, but with testosterone. You now need to administer that externally. So if we're going to use the business analogy, if you have 10 employees, for example, your output and the strength of your business is going to be limited by the strength of the underperforming employee because it's going to bottleneck in that scenario. So in this situation, you can't, maybe in the future you can, but you can't get testicle transplants, or, you can't, hijack the system from someone else. So in this situation, you have to fire that employee and do their job yourself. And this comes with pros and cons. Now you've got the advantage of being able to resolve that issue and have it perform at a high level. But now you've got the responsibility of doing that employee's job long term. And this is the trade-off when it comes to TRT, is now that you have this responsibility, it is a lifelong responsibility. Now, are there caveats and exceptions to the rule? Absolutely, for sure. But if we're looking at a situation of simplifying it for people to understand, is that once, it's like Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. If you're going to be on TRT and you're going to pull that trigger, you are making a commitment for life to replace your hormones, because the longer that system is shut down, the less of a chance that that system is going to recover fully in the future. So it's not something where, if you do one shot of TRT or if you do 1 month of treatment, that your testicles are now completely dead and destroyed. It's not quite that dire. But if you are on this therapy long term and you do interrupt this system, it is going to damage that system if it comes back. So what we want to be doing is only firing that employee if we absolutely can't fix their performance. If we absolutely can't train them up, if we absolutely have to get rid of them, then we get rid of them. Because if you don't, then you're going to suffer the consequences of that long term. And in this business analogy, the responsibility of doing that guy's job is negligible compared to the massive outputs you can get. If you have hypogonadism, like medically, clinically low testosterone, and you're doing everything else right with your health, and then you optimize and fix that testosterone level, the responsibility of having to do a couple of shots a week, or putting cream on every day, or maybe even having to do 3 shots a week, is a drop in the ocean compared to the return on investment that you will get from that for optimizing your health, which is why I dedicated my life and career to this field, is because it is so groundbreaking for men to reclaim and transform their lives. And I know it sounds like I'm selling testosterone at this point. I'm really not. But when it comes to the benefits of this, as you alluded to with your own experience, it's massive. And it is a small commitment to make in terms of the amount of time, effort, and energy that you spend per week actually doing this. You're going to spend less time administering testosterone than you will brushing your teeth. But there is that responsibility of getting the blood work done, having a provider who can look over it properly for you. Recently, there's a big trend of guys just going on forums and asking strangers and doing it themselves and getting all these problems. You're not going to buy scalpels online and do surgery on yourself. So doing hormone replacement therapy on yourself, it's not going to give you the same result, as just like a surgery won't give you the same result if an expert surgeon doesn't do it. So as long as you have the mindset of being like, I'm going to do this right, I'm going to do this professionally, I'm going to get the proper guidance and treatment that I need, the return on investment that you can get for time, effort, money, etc., it absolutely massive. I would argue that there's a better ROI for TRT if it's needed than any other supplemental or health intervention that you could make.
Yeah, powerful. And it doesn't sound like you're selling it at all. I mean, you've been very adamant and clear that it's something you do only when it's 100% necessary. I think the area where people get lost is they blur the lines on what that actually means, right? Because the results can be phenomenal, but you can get very good results without it if you don't have hypogonadism, right? If you're just a guy who eats shit food and drinks too much alcohol and your T's low, it might just be a lifestyle intervention. So it's very important, guys, if you are listening, to get your bloods done, see an expert. From there, if you are going to get on it, realize it is a lifelong decision. And the actual effort, I mean, you're right, it's less than brushing my teeth. I do it 3 times a week, about 30 seconds a minute to draw it out of the vial. It's very easy to do, but it is a lifelong commitment. Now, I know we're going to discuss your ebook and also your clinics and all that sort of stuff, but what are the benefits? So let's say you do go on this journey. You're a guy who's relatively eating well, sleeping well, relatively everything's okay, but the T's low. for me, it was like a whole new world. But what are the main benefits if we break it into buckets? Health, wealth, relationships. So what happens to your health and energy? What happens to your business and career? I know it's not a magic pill, but it does affect it. And then also what happens in how you show up as a father, as a husband or partner, because I've noticed all three have drastically changed. So let's start with the health bucket. What are the benefits for health?
Yeah. So from a biological standpoint, it's coming back to what happens when you increase your biological resilience to stress. So when we think of stress, a lot of the time we think about psychological stress or circumstantial stress. But when we look at defining stress, it's not having enough X to do Y. Not having enough money to pay the bills, not having enough intelligence to answer the question, or from a biological standpoint, it's not having enough energy to meet the demands of the body's needs. And when the body is in a low energy state, when the metabolism is compromised, we have this really effective backup system called stress. So the body just basically cranks up adrenal function, cortisol and adrenaline go up, and we get this great short-term energy boost, which is great if you're in a fight or flight situation. That's what it's for. Chronic stress is one of the most deleterious things to human health that we've found. It's essentially at the root cause of all disease, particularly chronic disease and the diseases of aging, which are cancer, diabetes, dementia, and heart disease, the big four. So when we look at it from a health standpoint, we become more biologically resilient, and it essentially creates a more youthful and more energetic environment for that. So your immune system gets better, your insulin sensitivity gets better, your muscle protein synthesis improves, your nutrient partitioning improves. All of the things that we want for functioning well day to day when we eat, exercise, think, all start to improve to the point that they should be for a healthy man. And this is one of the big issues that a lot of guys are having to learning about, is they're not functioning the way that their fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers did with relatively similar inputs and outputs because of the consequences of the multi-generational effects of endocrine disruption. So from a health standpoint, it fixes the foundation. So it's not going to build the house for you, kind of like what you said, it's not a magic pill, but it's going to give you the foundation so that if you go out and do everything right, it's then going to allow that house not to fall down, which is what we see happen all the time. Guys go, I'm eating well, I'm going to the gym, I'm sleeping well, I'm not making any muscle gain. When I eat in a caloric surplus, I get fat. When I eat in a deficit, I lose muscle. I can't sleep no matter what I do. I'm wired and tired, can't sleep at night, no energy during the day. And all of this stuff over time, and to kind of answer the rest of your question, then trickles into these other areas, which is your business and your relationships. So from a business standpoint, testosterone is not like Ritalin, Adderall, dexamphetamine. It's not like that, but it is dopaminergic, so increases dopamine transmission. So when we're looking at dopamine-based drugs, like what I mentioned before, cocaine, stimulants, all of these things, they basically increase dopamine output for no reason. So you can stare at a wall and your dopamine levels will go up because you took the drug. Testosterone doesn't do that. What it does is it allows your body to make the correct amount of dopamine when it should. So things that are supposed to feel good feel better. So it reinforces reward behavior, which is really important for motivation, because you're not motivated to do things if they're difficult and not rewarding. So if pushing outside your comfort zone, so let's say, taking on a new business project, or, going for something that's got a bit of risk, high risk, high reward, which most business opportunities are, if you're going to make a short-term sacrifice, I wouldn't say it's a gamble if it's a good business decision, some are, but it's going to be going, okay, I need to work a bunch more on this, and then the return I could get in the future for this will exceed the work that I have to put in the short term, but there is a risk this could go wrong. The stress level, if you're low testosterone, high testosterone, the amount of cortisol and adrenaline you're going to make is going to be the same. But if you don't have that biological buffer to it and the increased dopamine for the motivation and drive for doing this, you're going to net a very different scenario. And I like to look at testosterone in the brain like a Jaeger bomb. So the thing that DHT does, it increases dopamine and drive, but it also increases GABA, which is rest and relaxation, what things like Valium and alcohol work on. So kind of like the Jaeger bomb, you've got the stimulant and then you've got the calming effect. When it comes to testosterone, it creates a neurological foundation which develops the capacity for leadership because it allows you to stay cool, calm, and collected in stressful situations. And it's also going to allow you in these stressful scenarios when you're going for this high risk thing to be able to keep your cool when you're just working on these projects yourself, so that you don't get overwhelmed as easy. So you are motivated to seek more purpose and passion and pleasure in life. And if you're disciplined and if you're intelligent, you're going to drive that increased motivation for, purpose, passion, and pleasure into things that are productive and good for you, not things that are hedonistic and toxic. So it can increase your capacity for leadership, which I think is very important. When we look at, what is masculinity? I think masculinity is capacity for leadership. Testosterone doesn't make you a leader per se. It doesn't give you these masculine traits for free. I wish it did. It doesn't. It gives you the capacity to develop them if you condition yourself with the correct stimulus. And then the last thing is relationships. And, relationships are very complex, because you're dealing with the interplay of the masculine and the feminine. And then you're also dealing with the logistics of essentially running a team that's taking on life together. And that's difficult. Testosterone doesn't solve relationship problems, but it definitely gives you the foundation to have a healthy relationship. Testosterone is pheromonal. So women can sense higher testosterone levels. Men can also sense higher testosterone levels. When a high testosterone guy walks into the room, not in a massive way, but there is a level of respect that comes with that. People can sense it. People can feel it when people have that aura. So it has a pheromonal effect, but it's also impacting your decision making and reacting to stress. So I was a DJ in nightclubs for about 6 or 7 years. I saw a lot of fights get started. Every single fight I saw get started was by a woman. And then a guy stepped in and got laid out. I didn't see guys picking fights with each other. It was women picking fights and guys get laid out. I find that low testosterone men are more confrontational. They are more argumentative. Higher testosterone men tend to be more stoic. Higher testosterone men tend to be more calm and in control of their emotions. This idea that testosterone is going to make you some roid, ragey, aggressive dickhead, that's from high-dose anabolic steroids. It's not from bioidentical testosterone. What testosterone is going to do, for better or worse, is make you more of who you are. It's disinhibiting. So again, going back to the alcohol analogy, if someone says something when they were drunk and they went, "Oh, I didn't mean that, I was drunk." You did mean that. You just didn't mean to say it, because alcohol was disinhibiting. It got rid of those inhibitions. Testosterone is disinhibiting as well. That will make you more confident. Now, if you're an asshole, that might not be a good thing, because it's going to amplify your pre-existing traits. But if you're an emotionally intelligent, disciplined, and generous person, it's going to make you more empathetic and disciplined and a leader. But if you have these immature, maladaptive traits, it could amplify those as well, because now you're going to be more confident, and that might not be a good thing. So that's where we can see it go in multiple directions. And that's where it comes back to, again, this sports car analogy. It creates the environment where it is now more important than ever that you do the self-development work, because now it's becoming a more high risk, high reward scenario. So it gives you the capacity for all of those things to get better, but it's not going to make them better for you. But it creates the foundation where I would argue that if you're hypergonadal, all of those things are kind of doomed, or they have a shelf life. They're not going to last long. And as men get older, as guys get into their 30s and 40s, the burden of performance and burden of responsibility gets higher. If you're in your early 20s and you kind of don't have your stuff together, it's socially accepted. But as you're getting into your 30s and 40s, you're expected to have mastery of self. You're expected to have mastery of your craft or your trade. And you're expected to have mastery as a leader of your relationship or as a father. So as you're getting older, it's now more and more important that you have the capacity for all of those things. And ironically, as you get older, your testosterone levels decline. So if they were low to begin with, it's going to become more and more problematic the further you kick that can down the road.
Exactly. And it's all connected. There are so many men out there that feel like they're missing some sort of edge. And that word you used multiple times is so powerful: capacity. Capacity. I've also never heard anyone describe stress so well. It's stress is not having enough X to do Y. That's so powerful. We teach our clients at Empowered Man to eat healthy, to get in a great routine, meditate, journal, reflect on their day, and they lower their stress. But I've never thought of it as this idea of not having enough X to do Y. And this is the journey that I went on when I took it. Is I started and now I had more energy. And I think I just had the energy a man's supposed to have. You know, when you just don't need stimulants, you can get through the whole day every day. That's normal now. Most men don't have that as normal. And then because you're full of energy and because your capacity has risen, you're able to now perform better at work. I used to get stressed and upset about problems at work. Now I embrace them. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go, baby. And then when you're dealing with stress better, your capacity's increased, you got more energy, you're more in control. Of course, you're going to show up better in your relationships. It's so ironic. These things are all connected. And so many men think they're doing it right, but they're missing this one piece, which is their hormones are all sorts of fucked up. So if someone's listening to this right now and they're thinking, look, I have some of these symptoms. I have low energy. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I'm reactive. I'm triggered. I don't have motivation. I rely on substances. Get blood work, see an expert, look into this. Don't do it. Look into it before you make a decision. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we send everyone your way to look into the ebook? Anything else you'd like to add for someone listening who might have some of these issues or might be looking down this path?
Yeah, I think we've covered everything pretty well. The thing that I'll circle back to, which is, just furthering on what you said in terms of this edge that guys are lacking. And I like that term edge. It's kind of like the term like mojo as well. It's just like it's this masculine life force that's missing. And I don't like to get too like esoteric and woo-woo in terms of terms like life force and mojo and these things, but every man listening knows if they have it or they don't have it. And if they don't have it, they know guys who do have it. And testosterone is not going to be the thing overnight that's going to turn you into the Rock. It's not. But it's going to be the thing that's going to give you the capacity to respond appropriately to those things. So if guys are going to start TRT, I think the two most valuable things you can do is, one, condition yourself with hardships. So create this adversity that you previously wouldn't have wanted or been able to overcome and program it into your life. Things like learning martial arts. And I don't mean actually sparring and fighting people and getting a brain injury. Doing things like pad work, doing things like, CrossFit, like challenging exercise. And then also doing the yin and yang to that, the yin being working on mindfulness, working on meditation, learning to manage your stress response, learning to sit down with your mind and having a good relationship with the voice inside your head. And generally, people don't have a good relationship with that voice because they're guilty and they're underperforming and they know it. So the voice inside your head doesn't give you participation medals. If you lay down at the end of the day and your mind's racing, it's because you're not proud of what you accomplished that day. If you were, it's very peaceful to lay down at the end of the day and have rest because you earned it. And going back to this edge thing, so I did my postgraduate in science, and then I started a master's in neuropsychiatry. I wanted to learn how the brain worked and how to fix brain issues. What I learned in that process and why I dropped out of that study is that hormones are the ultimate marionettes of the body, the puppet master. They pull the strings when we're looking upstream in terms of how does the body get impacted, kind of like a pyramid, what flows down. Things like what we do, what we eat, how we think, all of these things are really important. But from a biological perspective, when people are trying to improve their immune function, when they're trying to alter their neurochemistry, when they're going, I want more serotonin, I want more dopamine, I want less cortisol, I want these things to happen in my body. These processes are all governed and regulated by hormones. So if the hormonal system is broken, then no matter what you do, it's going to be like pushing shit uphill. And the big problem that we're getting these days is that back 10, 20 years ago, the only guys who had hormone issues were men who were old enough to have the male version of menopause, age-related hormone decline. And there's still this paradigm in the space where if you're under 30 or under 25, all you need to do is eat well and exercise right, and you'll have optimal testosterone level. If you were obese during all of puberty, you think that hormone system just built itself and will just kick on properly when you get healthy in your 20s? Like, we're dealing with all these new modern problems that the system hasn't really caught up with, that people are experiencing. And for guys who are under 30, if you want to see an example of this, look around at how many women you've met and known under the age of 30 and how many of them have issues with polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, or extremely painful periods. I know in my experience more women who have menstrual problems who are around 30 or younger than women who have healthy, normal period cycles. So this is the female equivalent of what's showing up in women. And we're also seeing that in men. It's just showing up in anhedonic depression, so not feeling well, anxiety, avoidance, insomnia, issues with body composition, issues with mental. All of these things are showing up in men, and they're showing up in women too. And it's this huge hormonal epidemic, which has basically been thrusted onto us by the modern endocrine disrupting lifestyle, which is this plastics, pollutions, and pesticides. So understand that if you are dealing with these issues and you're doing everything right, it is your responsibility to go and look into this and seek the treatment that you may need. Otherwise, no one is going to come along and save you. No, general practitioner is going to pick this up in a routine appointment and fix it for you. And if you're unlucky, they actually may take you down a darker road, things like SSRI antidepressants or other psychiatric medications, which can cause more harm than good. So be the advocate of your own health. And when you are in doubt of what's going on, get it tested, get someone who can look at it comprehensively for you, and then make an informed decision. And I think that's the best advice I could give people listening is investigate, make an informed decision, because the risk of not doing it is very, very high in terms of the opportunity cost of what could be lost.
100%. That's so powerful. I mean, in life, there's always now pain and later pain, and we delay having the pain now, getting the blood test, seeing the expert. We know there's problems and challenges. We sweep them under the rug, kick that can down the road. There is very rarely an instance where the later pain is not 10, 20, or 100 times greater. Heart attacks, disease, cancer, breakups, divorces, depression, anxiety, medications. A lot of this can be resolved by one word: mastery. So if you've listened this far, I mean, the word is mastery. Master yourself, know what's going on with your blood, know what's going on with your hormones. And if they are low or if they're not where they need to be, we didn't even get into the standards for what low actually is. But if they're not where they need to be, commit to mastery. And your health, your marriage, your business, everything will improve because you improve. You are number one, and that's your responsibility. Very powerful, Dave. Thank you so much for jumping on. So guys, if you do want to follow Dave, we'll put his links down below, as well as a link to his ebook. It's the first one I read on this topic. Helped me immensely. So make sure you go and follow him and get a copy for your husband or yourself or any man in your life. If you are a man, get it for yourself. And if you did get value from this podcast episode, please share it around so more men can learn about this important topic. Give it 5 stars on podcast platforms, thumbs up on YouTube, and we'll see you guys for the next episode of the Empowered Man Podcast. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.